felt that that was part of the pathway.
And that should be. I mean, obviously somebody to initially legalize, they're not going to know English. But I think over time, over that 21 years, people should be required to learn English. And it's something, knowing that there's a prize at the end, which is, you know, and I always say this prize is the one that I was born with, right? Being an American citizen, it's a strong encouragement to people to learn English, to stay on the straight and narrow path, and to become integrated into American society. I mean, I agree with you 100%. I think we want people to become integrated in the society. I will say that we have always, during periods of immigration, had transitional phases for people. You know, because there was a break in immigration after 1924 until the 1960s, we sort of imagined that people who came to the United States before 1924, during the golden age of immigration, were put into an English-only environment. In fact, in Pennsylvania, they had to print the laws in English and German for them to be official laws. If you went to majority Swiss villages, which existed all, right, Swiss colony, right, the store, the catalog store, those were real Swiss colonies in the United States, and they used the different languages that were in Switzerland in the courts, in those American courts. It could be German, it could be French, it could be Italian.
Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah, solutions are easy, it's implementation that's hard, and you seem to want to come up with solutions. So as my congressman, would you vote for the fact that we should have English as the language of the United States, and that also would help with the assimilation part?
I would very much I'm not going to decide right this minute, but it seems to me like a very attractive idea that we should require, as part of the path to citizenship, I didn't even know it was 21 years until he said that tonight, that we should require people to learn English as part of that. So I think that that's a good idea, and I think that's a good thing that would satisfy a lot of people's concerns about this issue, because if that's what the people are looking for in this country that's offending them so much, is the idea that they're not integrating into the society, not assimilating, and learning English in this. You know, but I want you to know something. I go to so many different events as the county executive and now even campaigning for Congress of different ethnic groups. There are still lots of Italians that don't speak English well. I mean, the people came over in the 60s and 70s and 80s. There are lots of many groups that do not have command of the English language. And you know, they're successful people. I mean, they're doing great. But I think as a society, as a general rule, we should be encouraging people to speak English. There's no question about that. Yeah.
Don't you have to, in order to become a citizen, you have to pass a test?
You have to pass a test.
And isn't that test in English?
It is in English.
Is it offered in
No,
another language?
it's in English. There are certain, you know, for instance, I've had people who, you know, they had lost the ability to speak, so they're not able to speak in English. There are a variety of what they call medical exceptions that are available. I have had people who have severe learning disabilities not able to speak English. But generally speaking, I mean, we work, of those 1,600 people that we applied for citizenship for, I think about 95% took the test in English. And we, you know, and we support that because what it does is it provides this big incentive. You know, there are people who say, I want to learn English, but until you apply for citizenship and then you know you're going to be tested in English, you might say, I'll learn it in the future. Make me an English speaker.
I'm so busy with
but
so many
not
other
now.
things, right? Yes, please. The one behind you.
I'm a trustee at the Huntington Public Library, and we have two locations. We have one on Main Street, and we have one in Huntington Station. Our station branch has an unbelievable amount of immigrants from Central America, and we service them with ESL classes. So I don't totally believe the whole immigrant story with people not wanting to learn English. I have had the experience of seeing a tremendous amount of interest in learning English, but usually challenged by very long work days that don't accommodate classes at inopportune times of the day. But you should go down to the Huntington Public Library station branch, and you will get a real education about
It's very,
immigrants striving to better themselves.
it's there's no universal group that everybody fits the same characteristics with any group of people, okay? And when I was the mayor of Glen Cove, that was 22 years ago when I first became mayor of Glen Cove, 22 years ago. And the guys that were gathering on the street corner, and we stopped the whole thing from gathering on the street. We set up a centralized location. You had to go to this one location. If you weren't on this location, the cops were going to come by and break it up. But if you went to the centralized location, you stay there, you work for the day. If you don't get paid, somebody will advocate on your behalf. If you don't get hired for the day, you stay and you learn to speak English. You learn about the rules of the community. You're not allowed to drink in public. You're not allowed to litter. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. But some of those folks are now own their own businesses, and they own their own homes, and their kids are going to school with my kids at the public schools. And there are other guys that, went off the skids and broke the rules and went to jail and have been deported since then. So, I mean, there's no universal, as a general rule, I would say that most of the people that I encountered in this experience would work 6 days a week and go to church on Sunday, literally, most of them. But there are other guys that were drop-dead drunks that were taking advantage of the system. So there's no universal group, but the large majority of people trying to make it better for them and their kids.
And I think that just to think about the libraries in many ways are really the first line of integrating immigrants into local societies. If you want immigrants to learn English, most libraries, most groups like Caresa and like the organization I sometimes work for, which I'm not speaking for, but they're looking for volunteers to come and help. Like, you don't convince somebody to speak English by saying, our language is English. You know what? Nobody is signing up for Gaelic as a second language. They all know English is the language you need to get ahead in the United States, but they need help. We have professional teachers who work with them. I'm sure you have teachers who work with them, but we also like to have volunteers who come in and do one-on-one conversations where somebody can really develop their speaking skills.
We're actually doing a class in citizenship, in Catholic citizenship at the station. And I just want to say one other thing. I'm a Democrat, lifelong Democrat, grown up in a house full of Republicans, and I would never cross party lines, but Carl Marcelino, who is a Republican, has been very good to our library, and by virtue of that, he's contributed to that community as well. He gave us a grant for something like $25,000, and it goes a long way. I'm just going to say that. It's like, if you're concerned about immigration and integrating people into the community, think about, you probably wouldn't think that a library is that important, but it's really important.
Okay, this gentleman wants to go again, but just before you go, does anybody else want to go before him? Because he's going for a second time. Okay. Oh, wait a minute.
Go ahead.
Sorry, buddy.
Go ahead.
All right. Okay, you go ahead, and then you go ahead, and then you can go after that.
Well, my critical concerns are immigrants, illegal, who commit crimes. And I'm not talking about just the crime of entering the country illegally, but assaults or robberies or other crimes that hurt people and steal our property. Now, it's my understanding, though, that the current government deports those undocumented or illegal immigrants in this country who are convicted of crimes, are sentenced to prison, and then on their release date, as I understand it, correct me if I'm wrong, they are generally met by immigration authorities and then are deported immediately. So is that accurate? And if it is...
Not in Suffolk County.
Not in Suffolk County?
It's not accurate.
Okay,
No?
let's hear what the expert has to say.
Sure. So what you're talking about are immigration detainers. Prior to the 1990s, if somebody committed a crime, immigrant committed a crime and was convicted of the crime, they'd go to prison, be released from prison, and then sometime thereafter there would be deportation proceedings started against them. What happens now is the ICE puts a detainer on the person, and they do this on virtually every serious crime that's committed, so any type of a felony.
So it's not a parking ticket. It's not a
It's not a
speeding
park.
ticket.
Yeah, in Suffolk County, they do not do this if you got picked up for something like, I don't know, drinking in public or something that's essentially a quality of life violation or crime. But if you have, and they don't do it for simply being arrested, you know, you're arrested. But these are people who've been arrested and then convicted and then put into jail. And so the most efficient way that they can deal with it is to actually, they will actually, in some cases around the state, if you're in state prison, they will conduct the trial right in the state prison prior to your release, so it minimizes the cost to the government because you're already there. If you're in a county prison, they'll typically put a detainer where they will hold the person for several days after the date of release, and then the ICE agents will pick them up and they'll bring them into detention in the city, and then they'll be put on trial, typically in Barrack Street in Manhattan. So they're never actually released. They're in
So why
some type
does
of
this gentleman think that
incarceration.
it doesn't happen in Suffolk County?
Well, we can ask them.
According to the 2010 census and the federal government, Suffolk County had, if I remember correctly, it was 10 or 13 people that were deported.
Suffolk County actually had the largest number of deportations of any county in New York State, so it's not 10 or 13.
What does that mean? The other ones did nothing. I'm talking about numbers that I got off the census. I'm not talking about.
The census doesn't keep those types of numbers.
They
So
were in the commentaries.
Well, may have been in comments. but
Okay,
it's
so
not-
do you think that number of 10 or 13 is a reasonable number, or you think it's a much higher number?
It's a much higher number than that.
Like hundreds, or?
It's in the hundreds, yes, sir.
Why don't we find out, why don't we try and dig down to the bottom of that, okay, and see if we can get, can you help us
I'll
with that?
I'll
Find out
look.
where-
Yeah, sure.
I'll look where I thought I got that from. No
Let's,
problem.
you
No
may
problem.
not, sometimes it's
Yeah,
hard to
what's-
understand this stuff, and it's, a lot of bureaucracy, but let's try and find out what the real answer is, because that would not make sense, what you
What
said.
Suffolk County stopped doing about, I guess it's 5 or 6 years ago, was basically taking everyone who was picked up for a light being out on a car or putting out the garbage on the wrong day or whatever, and then incarcerating them and holding them for ICE. And the reason they did it made a lot of sense, and it goes to the issue of immigrant integration into the community. If immigrant families, and they're usually mixed families where somebody might be a citizen, somebody might be a permanent resident, someone else may be undocumented. If immigrant families come to see the local police as the same as ICE, they will not go to the police with reports of crime.
It's a major problem.
When Tom was county
I know.
executive, he made sure that the police worked with the immigrant community. And yes, from my perspective, it helped the immigrant community, but it helped everyone, because somebody who might prey on immigrants one day may prey on somebody else the next day.
We had this major problem with gangs, and we still do in Suffolk, in different places, in Nassau in certain places. And pushing people underground is the worst thing you can do. If you want, it's the best thing you can do to increase crime. And you want everybody to trust the police, that they can go to the police if a crime takes place and not be afraid to go to the police. And we had a very bad experience where the ICE officials came in working with our cops. And they literally came in, like the guy had from the Border Patrol had a cowboy hat on, and they were carrying like automatic weapons. And they would go into these people's house and would break down the door in the middle of the night. And the people they were looking for old warrants, they didn't actually find the people that they were looking for, and they terrorized these people in the process. Imagine if you were a little kid growing up, and you saw this happen in the middle of the night, and your dad was taken away, and it turned out that he wasn't even an undocumented person or illegal alien in the first place. And you would never have trust in authority figures ever for the rest of your life growing up. I mean, it's a lot of what the whole conversation today that's taking place with Black Lives Matters and Blue Lives Matter. You cannot have people not trust the police. It doesn't work. Society will not work if that happens. I'm a very strong believer in law enforcement. We have to support law enforcement, but we have to make sure that people respect and trust the police.
And this is one of the ways that you get people to trust the police. I mean, I've worked in the Latino community now for 33 years, so a third of a century, right? And I want people to trust the police, but the police also have to be trustworthy, and if the police are functioning as an adjunct to ICE, they're not going to be trusted within the Latino community. I think that Suffolk County Police, which had a lot of problems with the Latino community, and I think there's quite legitimate problems that Latinos had, has made some good improvements over the last several years. They still have a long way to go, but you'll notice that the gang problem has always been much less in Nassau County than in Suffolk County, even though Nassau has more immigrants living in it. I think part of it is because the Nassau County Police Department, and I hate to tell you, this even began a few years before you came into office, but you definitely built on it. The Nassau County Police Department reaches out to immigrant community groups, reaches out to churches. They show that they can do things for the community, like root out people who are defrauding them, go after gang members, etc., without picking up people who are innocent. You know, people don't want to see their innocent kid picked up. They do want to see the gang member picked up.
So it's 8:40 now. I'm going to give everybody a choice you can vote on. We're going to either go to 9 o'clock, 9:15, or 9:30, okay? Who's in favor of 9 o'clock? It's 8:40 now, 9 o'clock. Who's in favor of 9:15? Raise your hand. Who's in favor of 9:30? Raise your hand. Okay, this is not an easy group, okay? We're going to take it as we go for right now. Right now, we'll shoot for 9:15 right now, so that's the middle one. Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Gwendolyn Belton, and I live on 10th Avenue in South Huntington. Been there for quite a while. I'll actually be married next month for 40 years. So I've been there for a while. I'll keep them another year or two. But I stand to say, I get why there's an influx. Everyone wants a better life. And I'm raising my granddaughter right now. So when we go to the bus stop and you say good morning, nobody says good morning back. Okay, first morning, I'll give you a break. The next morning, good morning. And she said, Grandma, let's walk to school. Well, we're not walking to school. That's not an option. So the next morning, I did it again. I said, good morning. And I finally said, I know you know what good morning is. And everybody smiled and said, good morning. So I say to say, while we're different, we're yet the same, but we're yet different. So I had no idea there were 5 little girls her age in my neighborhood. She has no one to play with because everybody is staying to themselves. I look out my window and I see cars all over the place. Doesn't make me warm and fuzzy because I don't live in Brooklyn. I don't live in the Bronx. I have 3 cars and they're all in my driveway. And so I don't have a house full of people, and I understand the rent is so expensive and you need people to pay the mortgage or the rent or whatever it might be, but you're also changing my lifestyle. And that's not fair to me. So while we're yet different, we're the same, we want better, but there has to be a tolerance, and there has to be things that you just can't do. You just can't have your rooster running around loose. You cannot park your car up to the doorway. You cannot grow your corn out there with your flowers. There are just certain things, and I know they might be minor. They might be minor.
No, it's not.
I don't want to see, little things and then, no. Beautiful. We want everything to be, we can tolerate each other. It's not that hard. But let's respect each other. And if you want the people to respect the police has to respect the people. Nobody's going to trust you. My sons, which are now much older, they're standing in the driveway with their friends. 2 policemen in an unmarked car come out and want to body slam them. No, not here. This is not what we do here. We are law-abiding citizens. I want them to respect you, but they will not respect you because you're not respecting them.
So, first of all, I think what you said is absolutely right, okay? When you live in our communities, and this is a point that I made very strongly when I was mayor of Glen Cove. I made it the point as well as county executive, but certainly as mayor, because local law enforcement. If you're going to live in our community, you must abide by the rules of our community. That's whether you've been here for 5 generations or 5 days, like I said before. And people living in illegal housing, you can't live in illegal housing. Now, there's a problem with affordable housing, there's a problem with paying your mortgage, you said, but you have to live by the rules of the community that we set up. We can't, in our desire to be empathetic and our desire to be understanding, and our desire to be, compassionate, let people break the rules. You have to follow the rules of the community. So I actually increased prosecutions when I was mayor from 6 prosecutions before I got there for illegal housing up to 120 prosecutions after the first year in office. So a 2,000% increase. Because everybody's got to live by that rule. And I would say to my friends that worked in the Latino advocacy organization who owned a home in Glen Cove, I said, you don't want that happening to the house next to you on your street because it's your biggest investment. You don't want to see the community go down. So we want to be, now I don't like the idea when we saw the stuff in Suffolk where people were kicked out of their illegal housing, but then they were left to go homeless somewhere. So you have to try and figure out how to have a transition. But I agree with you that you cannot, that's a local law enforcement. So there's local law enforcement and then there's these federal issues, okay? Local issues, everybody's got to play by the same rules. That's part of living here, okay? Like I said before, no drinking in public. I don't care whether you're a newcomer or you don't know you can't drink in public. You can't litter. You can't say comments to people, women walking down the street. You have to follow the rules. And I feel very strongly about that. I feel we've been hoodwinked, however, about this federal issue, that it's been going on for 30 or 40 years, and nobody's done anything about it. And so we've got so many people that are just so angry about this issue on both sides, that as this gentleman said in the beginning, nobody even talks about it. You can't even talk about it. So that's the problem that we're facing in our country these days, is that, so few people vote in these primaries. This is a big problem. To win a Democratic primary in America, you got to go way to the left. And to win a Republican primary, you got to go way to the right. And as a result, you can't get anything done in the middle to actually fix the problems. So there's 750,000 people live in my congressional district. There's 186,000 registered Democrats. You know how many people voted in the primary? 18,000 people. 10% of the people eligible to vote. Now that's happening all over America. And you